Hi, I'm Allie and welcome back to Haven's Kitchen. Today I'm going to be walking you through some easy knife skills using some knives that every home cook should have. You don't need a ton of knives, you just need a few really good, really sharp ones. The three knives that every home cook should have are a big chef's knife, a serrated knife, and a paring knife. The most important thing to remember when you're wielding a large chef knife is that you want to have the most control over the blade as possible. So the first thing we tell students is don't hold the knife down here. Hold it up on the bolster and make sure that you're firmly wrapped around the knife. This gives you the most control. A serrated knife can come in this size or in a larger size. We like to use serrated knives for bread, but we also like to use them for tomatoes because the tomatoes have a lot of acid in them and can actually dull the blade faster than you'd like. And for really small vegetables and cuts and things like scoring where you want a lot of control and you want a really fine tip, we use a paring knife. This comes in handy, and again, it's really important to hold it kind of almost like you're scooping things with it because it gives you the most control over the blade. I really like using a cucumber to teach knife skills because it's fun and you can snack, and also there are just like lots of things you can do with a cucumber. So remember, you're going to pick up your knife and you're going to hold it tightly around the bolster. Whenever you cut anything, you want to use what we call a bear claw with your non-dominant hand. That means that you're not putting your hand out like this and cutting. You're making your fingers kind of like a claw and cutting so that if accidentally a finger gets anywhere near the blade, you don't get hurt. So the first thing we're going to do with the cucumber is just 1/4 inch slices. So we're going to cut off the little trim. And we're just going to cut down, and instead of moving the knife a lot, we're moving the cucumber. That way you're keeping your knife kind of on the cutting board, you're not hacking around, and you're going to try to create even slices. The next cut we're going to do is what we call half moons. So basically we have our cucumber and we're going to hold it like this using the bear claw and slice down the middle. And that creates two very flat halves. Then we're going to face the halves down on the board. And again, keeping our blade down on the cutting board and keeping our bear claw, we're just going to cut down. That's a half moon. We can also do 1/4 moons, which would be where we would just cut these one more time vertically down that way and then again across. Every once in a while, you'll get a recipe and you want a nice kind of minced cucumber or even little batons if you're making a spring roll or a summer roll or something like that. The first thing we're going to do is create planks. So cutting down, we're making kind of flat planks like this with the cucumbers. We can lay them on top of each other. And then we're going to create batons just by going vertically this way. So now we have these straight rods, essentially. We'll move that over there. Going from the batons into a chop is really simple because you just, again, with your bear claw and your knife, creating even little cubes like that. That's kind of a chop. If you want to get an even smaller chop, like a mince or a dice, you would again create planks, but you would do thinner planks. So we would create thin planks like this. And see how that's a thinner already, a thinner plank than before. and we would create kind of more of these thinner sticks, like that. And then once we have the thinner sticks, it's easy to make a dice because we're just cutting a little smaller instead of the bigger chop, like that. Honestly, I used to avoid like eating peppers because I hated cutting them and I hated all those like seeds flying all over the place, and it was just a huge pain in the ass. And then the chefs at the cooking school taught me this amazing little trick, which I absolutely love. So, bell pepper, chef's knife. Remember to hold your knife like you mean it, not down here. This is not going to do anything. You want to hold it by the bolster. And basically using a bear claw, you're going to cut off the top and you're going to cut off the bottom. And you are going to save those for later because we are going to eat that. We're not going to waste it. And you're going to see that the sort of center is connected by a couple of membranes, I think is the right word. And what we're going to do is face down. We're going to use the tip to cut on the side of one of the membranes and just kind of turn the pepper as we cut. And look at that. It keeps all of the seeds in this one handy dandy little thing that we're going to toss, because this we're not going to eat. Then all you have is like the part of the pepper that you want to eat. Now from here, you can do a number of things. And what we're going to do is we're going to start with planks again. So we're just going to cut it into 4 planks. And basically we can make strips like this. Or we can take those strips and line them up and then cut them again and make a dice. Really fun, really easy. At the end here, you can either just eat this or you can cut it and dice this up however you want. No seeds, no cleanup, really easy. So I'm not sure if it's like the Jewish mother in me, but when I see these like videos where people are literally hacking at the avocado and their hand is exposed, it makes me really uncomfortable. Please, do not hack at your avocado, especially when it's in your hand. There are safer ways to cut an avocado. Again, control of your knife, hold it up on the bolster. Put the avocado flat down and turn the avocado around the knife. See, the knife isn't moving, the avocado's moving. Then open it up like that. This is where we run into things where people are hacking. Again, don't hack, but again, hold the knife and just move the avocado around the knife and then twist. The pit will come out. So now we have avocado like this. If we want to chop it into like a salsa or something like that, we basically take our knife, using the tip, we're making lines this way, and then lines this way. And then basically out come little pieces of avocado. If you're making your avocado ahead of time and you don't want it to turn brown, all you have to do is squeeze a little lemon or lime on it. If you're only using half of the avocado, let's say, and you want to save the other half, honestly, you can just put it in your fridge. The top kind of exposed layer will turn brown. The next day you can just cut around it. Or if you want, you can put it in a little dish of water, and that will prevent the oxygen from basically turning the avocado brown. If you're making a dish that uses lemon, squeeze lemon. If you're using a dish that uses lime, use lime. You could also use a little salt, but that might change the taste of your dish. So we don't really like to kind of say this is how you should cut an onion or this is how you must cut an onion. But the reality is that when you're cooking with onion, if you have some really big pieces of onion and some smaller pieces of onion, they're just not going to cook evenly and it's going to irritate you. So in your best interest, we would like to show you the easiest, safest, most effective way to cut an onion. Using a chef's knife, holding the bolster, you're going to cut off one end of the onion. Again, bare cloth so that your fingers aren't there. And then basically cut through that way. You're going to peel off the outer edge and then lay the onion flat face down on the cutting board. Now from here, basically, you're going to use your hand flat, and depending on the size of the cut you want, we're going to cut twice across, not going all the way through and holding it together. If you go all the way through, you're going to end up with onion pieces all over the place. So you're keeping this little knob intact. And then following the lines of the onion, you're basically, again, going to use the tip of your knife with lots of control, cutting this way, holding it together. Fruits and vegetables usually show you the way that they want to get cut. And then basically we're cutting down using the bear claw, keeping the tip of the knife as close to the board as possible, and creating a perfect little dice. So winter squash can be a little scary to cut because they're hard and they're heavy and the knife sometimes gets like jabbed in and you don't know exactly what to do with it. Again, which is why you want to have a really good quality chef's knife, and you want to know how to use it, and you want it to be sharp. The thing about rolly vegetables and fruit is that you always want to create a flat surface. So if we're going to be cutting like this, all we're going to do is just cut one little part of it off like that, just so that it stays flat and it doesn't move. That'll just take some of like the fear out of it. Now basically to cut it in half, we could do a few things. We can cut slices like that. We can cut it in half like that. So like I said, vegetables like to show you how they like to be cut. Sometimes it's nice to keep like the little tip on the squash or the pumpkin when you're roasting it just because it looks pretty. So we're just going to find sort of the middle part and we're just going to cut down. You don't ever want to cut toward you. And it's okay if you kind of cut down a few different times and then you'll kind of crack it. Okay. So now you have two halves and you're going to use a spoon to scoop out the seeds. So just holding my spoon up tight, I'm just going to basically go around. You can just use a regular teaspoon for this. It's fun to save the seeds and roast them. You just kind of toss them with olive oil and salt. Squash seeds roast really well, just like pumpkin seeds. If you're not using them, just throw them out. So now we have the half of the squash. Again, we're not going to cut this way because it's not a flat surface. So how do we make this into a flat surface? We just basically put it face down. And again, you can see sort of the lines of the squash and follow them to cut even wedges. So I think a lot of people have started using like the jarred minced garlic because they are not quite secure with their garlic mincing skills, or they're worried about smelling like garlic or maybe garlic is just intimidating, but it really doesn't need to be intimidating. And if you know how to cut it well and you know how to get even mince, I can promise you that the flavor of fresh garlic is significantly better than the flavor of jarred garlic. So basically you have your cloves. The first thing to know is that for a lot of recipes, if you just want to imbue kind of the olive oil or the cooking with just the sort of aroma and the flavor of garlic, you don't actually need to mince anything. You basically do the smash where you cut off your edges, and using the palm of your hand and the chef knife down, you make it so that the skin peels off. This is your trick for no matter how you're doing your garlic, it's the easiest way to get the skin to come off. And if you just want to kind of throw this in with some oil before you saute vegetables or make a sauce, you can totally do that. And either you can kind of take them out, or honestly, they taste really delicious as is. If you do want to go further and mince, again, sharp chef's knife, hold it with control up on the bolster, and you start by making even slices. If you start with even slices, it's going to be easier to get an even mince. It's really important to keep your bear claw for something like garlic and make sure that your fingers are like that. So the blade of the knife, if it touches anything, it's only going against your fingers. Now we have these even slices, and all I'm going to do is kind of lay them on top of each other, kind of like planks again. And cut in one direction using your bear claw. And then going from there, basically flat hand on the blade, and you're just going to go back and forth, rocking the knife. You can go in a couple different directions and just kind of use your finger to get the garlic back on the board. Keep going. If you want, you can kind of use your blade and smear it a little bit with a little salt, and it kind of creates like a garlic puree. So here's the secret. If you have just been cutting garlic and you don't feel like walking around with the garlic aroma on your fingers for the next day and a half, there are two things you can do. One is if you happen to have a stainless steel faucet on your sink, honestly, I wet my hands and I rub the faucet. There's something magical that happens where the sulfur from the garlic kind of adheres to the stainless steel, taking it away from your fingers. If you don't have stainless steel, you can also just rub a lemon. All of the acid in the lemon actually works, and it kind of takes away the smell. It's perfect. This is a serrated knife. It has like the little jags. It comes in a few different sizes. Generally, bread knives are bigger, but this gives you a lot of control too. And it's great for cutting things like bread, but it's also great for cutting tomatoes. So for bread, one of the things, again, if you're making croutons, you kind of want even cuts. So again, bear claw, and you're just going to start with a flat piece and then make a grid. Turn it around. The serrated just makes it easier to get a clean cut. And honestly, I don't think they ever, you don't really use them enough that they get dull to the point where they don't work. So a serrated knife will probably last you like 30 years. We also like using serrated knives for cutting really acidic things like a tomato, and also tomatoes have been known to get smushy, and sometimes the knife kind of goes into the skin and you don't get a clean cut, and you can get a cleaner cut with a serrated knife. So for a tomato, a couple of different things. Personally, I like cutting tomatoes kind of the way that the shape of the tomato is sort of signaling it likes to be cut, meaning that it has this round sort of shape. I like to kind of make round cuts. So you want to have the flat side down, and you want to make even pretty wedges. If you are doing a dice, then you make planks first, and then again cutting. And a sharp knife is the key to having tomato cuts that aren't mushy. Once you have those, you can cut again, and then just get to the point where all of your cuts are sort of even. Here's a really fun hack for cutting cherry tomatoes or baby tomatoes. If you happen to have 2 lids of some quart containers, you basically load one of them up with your baby tomatoes just until they start to run out of space. Cover with the other one and take your knife, holding and pressing down. Now you have perfect little tomato halves. Just a great little, hack. So for dishes that use asparagus, the way that I've been doing it for like 20 years is just bending it, and where it breaks, discarding this part because it's harder and it's more fibrous and it's harder to digest. The truth is that leads to a little bit more waste than I would like. So instead of breaking it and throwing out this whole thing, we're going to just use our chef knife to cut off the end. And then if you still feel like there's a little too much fiber, if you just kind of peel the outer layer a little bit, you're going to get more asparagus out of the asparagus, have less waste, and it actually looks pretty elegant on the plate. So what I'm about to teach you might actually blow your mind, because I gotta say, it kind of blew mine when I learned it for the first time. Corn, great for summer recipes. Everyone loves corn, buttered corn, grilled corn, tossed corn, corn salad, salsa with corn. But the thing is that cutting this and getting it down to the kernels ends up with like corn all over your kitchen, corn all over your hair, everywhere. So let's teach you how to break down your corn into kernels without a lot of mess or fanfare. Okay, first things first, using your chef's knife, sharp, and a bear claw, cut off both ends of the corn. And then you'll be able to shuck it super easily just by pulling it down this way. Okay, we've shucked the corn. The husk came off easily because we made 2 flat cuts instead of trying to like start at the top and get all the little loosey fiber things. Now we have 2 flat sides. We're going to put 1 flat side on a small bowl that's set inside a big bowl. And we're going to hold it and we're just going to cut down. So all of the corn, instead of going all over your kitchen, is basically going into this bigger bowl. And again, you want to be holding the knife so that you have control. And you want to keep your fingers in a bear claw on the cob. Then you simply take out the little bowl and you have all of your corn ready to go. So when you hold a paring knife, again, you're not going to have as much control if you're holding it too low or down here. You want to really choke up on it and just hold your fruit or your mushroom or your Brussels sprout and just basically using this hand, pull towards that hand, and you have a nice clean cut. All right, there you have it, some knife skills from our kitchen to yours. If these tips and tricks sound like they'd be helpful to you, be sure to subscribe. To get your own Zwilling products, check out the links below. Thank you so much for watching, and cook happy.